name is Colin SkipperWing Bird, and welcome to another episode of the Crimson Fly YouTube series, where you can see the process of me making the anime comic, the Crimson Fly. If you skip to the end of the video, you can actually check out the comic, but I highly suggest that you stay and watch. You might just learn something. Today's music is Hollow by Ampix off of the Argo Fox YouTube Creative Commons channel, and you can find a link to download it in the description below. If you'd like a version of this video without the audio commentary, you can check out the links in the cards, or in the description below, or in the annotations when they appear on screen at the end of the video. Speaking of today's video, let's go ahead and break that down. So, our main character, the Crimson Fly, survived a grenade. Because of course they did. This is a prequel issue, and they kind of have to, they are the main character, so there's kind of no, they were gonna survive the grenade. However, just when they think they're safe, it turns out that slamming into a wall, and of course the force of the grenade, is not good for the building that they're in, and it collapses, just so happening to reveal the gang that's looking for them in the midst of the rubble. Lots of fun. Do they want, will the gang find them? Do they want to be found? Shoot, lost my train of thought on that one. But, what happens if they do find them? Or will they not find them? You'll have to read next week's strip to find out. But, let's get back to today's strip. So, today's strip was, from a purely illustrational perspective, kind of basic, although there is some really cool stuff happening in panel 4. The first panel answers the cliffhanger of the last issue, where the character got sent flying. Well, here they land. And that's actually why last week's strip ended the way it did, because if it hadn't ended, if it ended with them landing, then the suspense would have been lost for this week's strip, and I would have kind of had to stretch that out a little bit more. So yeah, they land in this one, and everything is hunky-dory, or so they think. Until the wall falls over and it reveals their location, or sort of reveals their location. There's something really cool going on there with silhouettes that I really like. The idea of the characters being in black, being silhouetted by the hole in the wall, and then the Crimson Fly being silhouetted underneath that by their outline. Which, not exactly the best choice, because rim lighting relies on some sort of light source, and you can't just like put a rim light where there wouldn't normally be one. However, I really wanted that strong outline, so I figured it was worth it in this instance. Excuse me. When it comes to the first panel, because that's the one that's really animated, I did it rough early on, and then I decided I would come back to it at the end of the video. And that's because I know that these, if I do all the animation in that one moment, then the end of the video is going to be kind of boring because it's just going to be programming, so I decided to put it off. And I figured that I would animate it traditionally, because that's usually how something that dynamic goes. But it turned out that I used a mix of puppets and traditional. Like, the first frame is traditional because it's just a smear, but then when the character hits the wall, I use the puppet mode to sort of subtly imply overlap before switching back to traditional for the fall, and then switching back to puppets with the head and the arms and the legs for at the end. So, kind of a hodgepodge, mostly because I don't have a templated puppet for the Crimson Fly, and I can't really afford to make one even if I wanted to. But I think it worked in this particular instance. What really baked my noodle was the fire. For some reason, I keep setting up situations for things to be on fire in the Crimson Fly, even though I hate animating fire. Don't know why I do it, but I do. And because it's been a while since I've animated fire, I kind of forgot how I'd done it before. And what I really should have done is I should have gone back and referenced my old files to see how I'd done it then. But I'm on a timer, I'm on a stream, and so I couldn't really go back and do that, so I just plucked the idea back out of my head and went from there. In terms of animating fire, what I usually do is I start with a spherical shape, basically the sort of nucleus of the fire, and then just have kind of rising bubble effects rise off of it, and then create the streams of fire on top of that. And so, and to keep it random, I do each plume of fire as its own individual layer. So that way it doesn't feel like they're all rising at the same time, because the tricky thing about fire is that it's not just it's not just a rising, it's also chaotic and random. And so if it's not chaotic, then you will subconsciously know that that's not right. So I spent a fair amount of time working that out, and I think the individual frames worked out great. I'm not entirely sure about the fire as a whole. Speaking of the fire as a whole, another little nifty little trick that I used was reusing the assets of the fire. So like if you go onto the main site, crimsonfly bit.ly/crimfly87 or no 86, or just the crimsonfly.com, you'll see that, and you look carefully, you'll notice that the fire in panels 1 and 2 are actually the same. And the reason for that is because I knew that without people being told, you wouldn't notice. Not because people are dumb, but because the camera is so zoomed in that you can't really tell that it's the same fire. And it's the same thing with panel 3, actually, now that I think about it. Mostly because the composition has changed, and I just moved the fire away so that it doesn't feel uniform. But again, lots of nifty little tips and tricks to basically smoothen out my workload. Another cool little trick that I pulled off for this one that I didn't really think about when I conceived it was having panels 3 and 4 be simultaneous and have the actions in panel 4 affect panel 3. It's something I've never tried before. The idea that when the wall falls over, the crimson fly in panel 3 actually reacts to that. And I don't know about you, but that's actually kind of nifty to me. And I think that's one of those things that only animated comics can do. Well, I guess you could do it in a video game too, but in terms of just purely narrative fiction, yeah, animated comics, that's something new, and it's a cool little trick that I'm going to have to keep trying out. Trying to make a comic that, can't be printed, and also can't be replicated in animation or sequential art, which is kind of, not sequential art, but printing, which is kind of contradictory and hypocritical considering that I do make videos and I do print comics. So, yeah, that was a cool trick, but the wall falling over was not fun. Mostly because at first I tried to make it a complete symbol, but that didn't work because the necessary work of tilting it in perspective required that I would probably have to redraw it. Although what I could have done is I could have just made the edge of the wall its own symbol and then made the wall itself another symbol. Oh man, that would have been so much easier, but it is what it is. So you gotta keep rolling with the punches and try and learn, and that'll have to be something for the next strip. But instead what I did was I did it purely traditional as a piece is sort of like falling and crumbling separately, and I think that's pretty believable. Even though the fact that it falls in a perfect silhouette around the Crimson Fly, not so much, and doesn't actually bonk them on the head either. But hey, suspension of disbelief, that's what it's there for. And besides, you got dust clouds. I think you guys will be happy with that.